Hello, welcome to Warhammer 40k. Today's the last review from the Necron Codex, so all the unit reviews you'll find in the Necron playlist on the channel. So after this point we're going to be diving into more tactic videos and other Necron associated videos. So let's get stuck into the final review, which is the Night Scythe, which is one of your flyers which doubles up as a transport option. It's going to cost you 145 points. Now, as all the main detachments allow for 2 flyer units, you shouldn't really have any issues fielding one if you wanted it within your list. Unless you're going really heavy on the Doom Scythes perhaps, but without quantum shielding those things get picked off fairly easily. So let's run through some of the keywords of note. They're obviously a transport option, they've got the Night Scythe keyword, they're a vehicle, and they are an aircraft and they can fly. So being an aircraft means it has the minimum movement which it has to take every turn, and if the aircraft does not make its minimum movement then it either needs to fly off the board into strategic reserves or it's going to be destroyed, and that includes the passengers too. Furthermore, aircrafts can move over other aircrafts as long as they don't end their move within engagement range of those aircrafts. Then finally, you can't tie up an aircraft so it can just fly away if something does end up in its engagement range. All the other keywords are quite standard, so let's jump into the stat line. So it does have a degrading stat line, which is a movement of 20 inches to 50 inches, so there's a minimum of 20 there. Weapon skill 6+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 6, toughness 6, wounds 12, attacks 3, leadership 10 and a 3+ save. So once it goes below 6 wounds, its max movement drops to 40 inches, the ballistic skill goes down to a 4+, attacks go to a D3. Then when you're below 3 wounds or less, the maximum movement is only 30 inches, ballistic skill 5 and then only 1 attack. So the attacks are kind of irrelevant as you don't really need to be in combat with this thing, but you really need the movement to ensure that it drops units in the right place. So let's move into that part of the datasheet which is the transport capabilities. So this model has a transport capacity of 20 Dynasty Core Infantry units, or they can be a Dynasty Infantry character or a Dynastic Agent Infantry model. So you could shove a 20-man warrior unit in here, but it's not going to have a supporting character as the maximum models allowed is 20. So you could instead use 19 warriors, which will then allow for room for an overlord with an orb perhaps for the My Will Be Done ability. Lich Guard are a very solid option as they are slow, so you could get them in there with a Chronomancer perhaps. So this method of transport has an advantage of allowing your guys to get out and then only be within 1 inch away, so that you virtually won't fail your charge roll when you want to charge. Other methods usually involve some sort of 9-inch restriction, such as Deep Strike, which I'll go over in a bit more detail in the summary. So as for the abilities of the aircraft, it's got Living Metal, Command Protocols, all the usual stuff there. It's got Supersonic, which is each time a model makes a normal move, advances or falls back, you can only pivot 90 degrees from its starting position. And once you've started moving, it can't then re-pivot. So you've got to be really careful with aircrafts because of their minimum movement as well. And when they're only pivoting 90 degrees, you've got the potential of being trapped or being forced off the board as your opponent can screen off areas knowing where you need to fly to. It explodes when destroyed, which is on a D6, rolling a 6. Any units within 6 are going to suffer D3 mortal wounds. It then has airborne, that the Night Scythe cannot declare a charge, and it can only be chosen as a target of a charge if the charging unit has the fly keyword. So the things to avoid here are those melee flying units such as Flying Hive Tyrants or Demon Princes, that sort of thing. And finally it's got hard to hit, so each ranged attack that's made against the Night Scythe is going to be a -1 to hit. On to the weapons. So a Night Scythe is equipped with Twin Tesla Destructor. It's got a range of 36 inches, it's heavy 10, strength 7, there's no AP and is 1 damage, and 6 is explode into 2 additional hits. So regular viewers on the channel will know that I quite dislike this weapon. Strength 7 just feels a bit too big for infantry, and the damage just isn't doing enough to vehicles because it's damage 1. Then the fact that there's no AP either, so power armor will likely just ignore it. So let's do a breakdown to show you what I mean. So it's got 10 shots, and while it's at ballistic skill 3, the rule of thumb with Tesla weapons, so you pretty much on average get your hits back from the amount of shots you have. So if you've got 10 shots, you're likely to get 10 hits after those exploding 6s. It's a weird way of almost auto-hitting, except you're not actually auto-hitting, it's averages. Anyway, so from the 10 hits you create once those 6s do explode, here's what you're going to be doing. So against, for example, Guardians at a toughness 3 with 1 wound, you're doing 8.3 wounds on average, and you're going to be killing around 5.6 of them. Versus toughness 4 Intercessors with 2 wounds, it's going to be 6.7 wounds on average, killing 1.1 of them, so not many there. Against vehicles and monsters at a toughness 7, you're doing about 5 wounds, doing 1.7 damage. Then when you're going up to toughness 8 or more, it's 3.3 wounds, only 1.1 damage. So as you can see from the results, it's only really doing anything to weak toughness 3 units. And it didn't even need to be strength 7 to wound them on 2, strength 6 would have been enough. The strength 7 lowers you into a false sense of thinking that you can really hurt vehicles, but realistically it doesn't even do 2 damage to a vehicle, even from 10 hits. Also against Primaris armor, you're killing only 1 marine on average in a given shooting phase. So the damage output isn't really what this flyer is about. You can of course improve the weapon with dynasty codes. Now the mephric code grants an additional 3 inches, making it a 39-inch range weapon. So firing at 20 inches, which is half range, will actually give you an extra -1 AP. It does in some way improve the weapon. Marines are now taking 1.7 dead on average as opposed to 1.1. The only other code worth looking at with the Night Scythe is the Nephric Dynasty, giving a 6+ invuln save as it doesn't carry an invuln. So moving away from the Wargear, let's check out a few stratagems it has at its disposal. The first one is Stellar Alignment Protocol. It's going to cost you 1 command point. Used in the command phase, you select a Necron vehicle that has a wounds characteristic of 10 or more, which this one does, it has 12. Then until the start of the next command phase, the model is considered to have full wounds remaining for the purposes of determining which characteristics on its profile to use, whether it's bracketed or not basically. So only really useful if it's taken a battering already and you need that movement still. But at this point you're better off just offloading the infantry to prevent even more casualties. The second one is Prismatic Dimensional Breach. So this stratagem is used in the reinforcement step of your movement phase. You select a Dynasty core unit that is in strategic reserves. Then you select a friendly Night Scythe or Monolith that is on the battlefield, and you can set up that core unit anywhere on the battlefield that is wholly 3 inches within that Night Scythe or Monolith model and not in engagement range of any enemy units. And this stratagem cannot be used in the first battle round. So this one strategy may be its saving grace to the flyer, as usually when you transport your guys in, they can't disembark until your next movement phase, due to the vehicle moving in that phase. So this is sort of a bit of a loophole around that rule, because you technically don't have the infantry models inside the flyer to begin with. It's an empty flyer that flies close to the enemy units, then you're teleporting them in from strategic reserves. So you pop the stratagem on your Lich Guard or whoever you want popping in, and they can be set up slightly out of engagement range, meaning it's virtually impossible to fail a charge in your charge phase. Just bear in mind you can't use it in turn 1. Also bear in mind that a full squad of 10 Lich Guard is going to cost you 2 command points to put them in strategic reserves. Third stratagem is Curse of the Pharaon. It's going to cost you 1 CP. When your vehicle is destroyed, instead of rolling to see if it explodes, it auto-explodes, so it can be really useful if you've got lots of enemies nearby, doing D3 mortal wounds per unit for just 1 command point. So before we move into the summary section, I wanted to bring up a common debate I have in the comments with the community. And I may actually add a poll to this too, to see what the majority think. So do you guys prefer the use of a 145 point Night Scythe to get a 10-man Lich Guard unit in and a HQ character, or would you rather use a Veil of Darkness Relic, which is free, and you place that on that same character to get your Lich Guard up the board? Now there are pros and cons to doing both. Now taking a flyer allows the flyer to move right up close, drop your guys without any 9-inch restrictions, so they can effectively jump out and be only a few inches away for their charge. It does however cost you 145 points for the flyer, and you do need to wait until your next movement phase to get out, unless you're using that stratagem, so it will all be done on a single turn, providing it's not turn 1. Or you got the Veil of Darkness Relic, which is free, as you get 1 free relic for an army. You could pay a command point to get another one, and this is going to get your core unit as well as the character up the board, so again it could be an Overlord with a Lich Guard for example. Now this saves you the 145 points, but you are restricted to be 9 inches away from the enemy unit with that relic, similar to deep striking. So I'm going to put a poll later on today. Also put what you think in the comments below, what option you're going to prefer and why. We'd love to know. So let's move into the summary, starting off with the good. It's a method of getting your slower core units into melee or into gun range, so that's going to be your Lich Guard and your warriors in particular. Now unlike the Ghost Ark, it allows for 20 infantry models to enter for the transport, which actually makes it usable, because the Ghost Ark you're not really going to ever field 10 warriors. Of course the fly is pretty quick, so it can be used as a late game line breaker. As for the bad, it's got a degrading stat line, it's competing with that Veil of Darkness Relic, which is free of charge. The weapon it carries is almost non-existent, especially against most of the factions within the game. Now something else we didn't actually mention is the fact that flyers cannot score points from objectives, so they can't be scoring any victory points by holding anything, because the flyers can't hold objectives. So this stings in particular when you play smaller games, as you need all your units to either be scoring points or piling on tons of damage, such as a Catan Shard for example. Then finally the movement, although you are going quite fast, you're restricted as you must move at least 20 inches and you can only pivot 90 inch. So this can force you into certain areas of the battlefield or off the board entirely. Personally I don't see a need for them. I know a lot of Necron players love them as they avoid the 9-inch restriction, but I don't feel you need to pay 145 points for that benefit. Now a Chronomancer can allow for a reroll to a charge roll, or you can have a command reroll on the charge. That doesn't guarantee you're going to make it, and it can be a game changer moment if you do fail it twice. But this is 40k, these things do happen. 145 points does go a long way, especially for Necrons, because we've got quite a high cost army. Or if you think about it, 10 Lich Guard is 280 points and the Scythe is 145 points. That's 420 points that you've invested in this one idea. Now if you divide the cost of the Scythe into each of your 10 Lich Guard models, that means those 10 Lich Guards are actually costing you 42.5 points per model. I personally wouldn't pay that. For that same amount you could get say 12 Ophidian Destroyers or 12 Scorpet Destroyers. Those Ophidian Destroyers in particular have the Tunneling Deep Strike ability built in. Just an example there, there's plenty of other things you could spend those points on. So as for the rating, I think they're below par. Once they do make their drop, they don't really have much else they're doing. So I'm going to be giving them a Planet 40k rating of 2 out of 5. Guys, I'm sure some of you won't agree, so in the comments explain why not. And if you do agree, back me up in the comments. Some of you are really good with numbers and I'd love to hear what both sides have to say with this debate. While you're doing that, hit the like button to help grow the channel. Without you guys, the channel can't go on to better things. And if you are new and enjoyed the content, remember to subscribe below. Thank you all for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.